Help support the show by going to the Amazon.com search bar on footballsamerica.com when doing your online shopping. There are no charges to you, just support, and it will take you right back to the Amazon website. This month, Footballs America podcast listeners will get free shipping on any order over $35 when they go to footballsamerica.com/Amazon. Again, that's footballsamerica.com/Amazon.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Footballs America with Ron and Kyle. I'm Ron.
And I am Kyle. Today we are joined by Evan Tex Western, managing editor, lover of all things Packers, Badgers, Brewers, beer, cheese, sausage, and other things Wisconsin from Acme Packing Company, the one and only Packers blog and team page, part of the very excellent SB Nation community. Evan is here to talk Packers in probably a weird Midwestern accent where instead of saying tortilla, he says tortilla, and bring us a great deal of information and knowledge, and probably more than a couple of jokes about Jay Cutler. Evan, thanks a lot for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. And I like Mexican food too much to mispronounce tortilla, so no worries on that one.
That's about the only dig I have on Wisconsin. Like, that's it. I don't know enough about Wisconsin to make fun of other things.
Well, let's face it. You cover it in cheese, and we're perfectly happy.
Well, here's the thing. I grew up in California, and I can't even make fun of you guys for the cheese, because in California, we'd run these ads like, oh, Wisconsin cows, blah, 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 but California cows in the sun, oh, better cheese. And then you go to Wisconsin, like, the hell are you talking about? We don't run any negative ads. And I grew up in a cow town in California, and I'm like, our cows are like knee deep in feces, man. I see pictures of Wisconsin cows. They're the ones happy on the farm. So even the one thing that most people make fun of you, I know better. No, your cheese is way better. So no, we're not doing that.
Yeah, you don't see restaurants pushing their real California cheese on menus.
No, because it's garbage. I know that. Don't buy California cheese. Now before we get into the team, let's talk about you. As managing editor, you're going to be definitely like the guy with the website, highly involved. Maybe a lot of your fans don't know enough about you. So let's talk about you before we talk about the team. And the first thing we want to know, how long have you been a fan of the Packers?
Basically since I came out of the womb. You grow up in Wisconsin, you bleed cheese from the day you're born. So, yeah, it was not a choice. It's something that you're bred into. And, as much as, loving the Packers and loving Wisconsin sports, you're bred to hate Minnesota and Chicago just as much. So, sorry to the Bears fans out there, but, yeah, you guys still suck.
It's accurate. Anyway, Ron, this is going to be a fun one.
Yeah, sure is.
Yeah. Hey, we did the Patriots one just fine, guy. You'll be fine. Next thing I want to know, Evan, as managing editor, you're definitely involved a great deal. What is it that drove you to be a professional and write about this team? Is it just fanaticism and wanting to be involved in the community? I mean, give us a little bit of insight to that.
Well, I've got a science background, and for whatever reason, I've always enjoyed writing, and obviously, my passion for the Packers is a big part of my life in the fall, and I'm a draft nut in the spring. This is my, one of my favorite times of year is the 2 weeks or so leading up to the draft, and it just kind of seemed like a good way to get that writing out of myself. You know what I mean? And it's something that I kind of caught on with several years back, and we had a little bit of turnover, and the managing position came open, and I jumped at it, and I've been doing this for going on 2.5, 3 years now. Been with Acme Packing Company in general for about 6, and so it's just born out of writing about something that I love and that I'm passionate about, and that's Packers football.
It probably helps that you don't have to really worry about the free agency in the offseason either. You can just go right to draft too, right?
Well, yeah, it does make for some slow news days in March, that's for sure. I remember last year I was on vacation over spring break, and when the Julius Peppers signing hit, and all of a sudden we got to scramble because we're figuring, all right, well, nothing's going to happen this weekend because Ted Thompson's Ted Thompson, and he's not going to sign anybody, and so we pretty much we didn't really have a contingency plan for some big signing like that, so it kind of caught us by surprise. But yeah, no, it's the draft is obviously such a big part of how Ted builds his team, and it's certainly something that I've enjoyed from following, since I was a little kid.
I think what the Packers should do is anytime they sign a free agent, they should write into the contract, this cannot be announced until April 1st. Just to mess with all of us. Like, no, they didn't. They didn't sign him. Shut up. And then April 2nd, oh man, okay, I guess they did. Just mess with all of us. Why not? And to throw on to what Ron was saying, it's easy to be excited for the draft when you've got the kind of track record the Packers have where, all right, okay, you might not be getting first round value in the 7th round. Nobody's doing that, but you're definitely getting round for round value almost every time. Everybody who's drafted, okay, it might just be a practice squad guy, but a competent practice squad guy, and that's still worth something. So a little easier than some other teams. You're not having the kind of history of teams like drafting quarterbacks over and over again with the 22nd overall pick just to give us all something to laugh about.
Sorry, Browns fans. Yeah, no. Yeah, it's great that Ted can find the mid to late round guys that he has. I mean, he's had ridiculous success in like the 4th round and with his compensatory picks. You think of guys like Josh Sitton, who's an all-pro guard. I mean, TJ Lang's, he was a 4th round pick too. Hell, finding Corey Linsley in the 5th round last year, all of a sudden you got a guy who starts all 16 games for you at center when your projected starting center goes down with 1 week left in the preseason. So it's finding those guys, and that's really where Thompson does his best work is, identifying some of these lesser known prospects, doing all his due diligence on these guys. And I mean, Ted lives and breathes football, and that's basically what he lives for. And it shows in the success that he's had on draft day.
Okay. As you said, you've been a fan of this team since, you started breathing air and bleeding cheese. A lot of memories of the team, a lot of good memories, a lot of great memories at that. Packers have had a lot of success and relatively few lows, but looking back over your life, over all of the experiences you've had as a Packers fan, can you share with us what you would say is your strongest memory of the team? Good memory, bad memory, a personal memory, grandma got you a cheesehead hat, share with us what is the thing you think of when you think of your life as a Packer fan.
Yeah, I think it goes back to Super Bowl 31 for me. That was in my relative youth, and seeing my family, which who had gone through the lean years of Packers history in the 70s and 80s, going through 2.5 decades of just terrible football, and seeing my grandparents and my parents and my aunt, who I'm really close to, just celebrating the Super Bowl title with them that year, getting back to that level. It was really a special thing for our family and for me personally.
So with all of that said, we kind of go over what makes you the Packers fan that you are, what has driven you to do this. We have to kind of take a look at last season in specific. Heading into the season, the Packers were the dominating favorite to win the division easily, go deep into the playoffs, and was considered a real contender to win another Super Bowl. But after the first 3 games, fans were starting to panic. That was until Aaron Rodgers cracked open a beer, lit up a stogie, grabbed some cheddar, and told everyone to relax. After that, it was the Packers' offensive extravaganza, as they went 9 of 10 in that stretch, the only loss coming just before the bye week to the Saints when Rodgers hurt his ankle. In that time, the Packers outscored opponents 396 to 225, a 171-point margin, and the biggest in a stretch of 10 games ever in the Super Bowl era. Even as a Bears fan, I have to acknowledge how amazing that record is, as the Packers marched on to be the third overall ranked best offense since 1992, tailing only to the 2000 Rams and the 2007 Patriots. Let's just say that a whole lot has gone right for the Packers over the last few years. Some will argue that it's the inhuman abilities of Aaron Rodgers. Others will say that it's incredibly talented scouting and management of the team. I believe it's the town of Green Bay selling their souls to the devil. Lots to go over here. But before we do, let's get your take on the season. We normally ask our guests if they thought it was a successful season, but we already know what that answer is. So tell us what you took away from the season on not only an overall sense, but the little things as well.
Well, I think one of the critical things is over the few years before this past season, you'd seen early exits in the playoffs. And, certainly in 2013 with Rodgers' injury, missing 8 games, and then coming back and still finding a way to win the division. But nobody really expected a whole lot there. But, the previous couple years losses to San Francisco and the Giants, there was really a question of, is this team going to break through and really compete for a Super Bowl again? I think this season proved that, yes, absolutely, the Packers are one of the 2 best teams in the NFC. You saw that with the way they dominated Seattle for 55 minutes in the NFC Championship game. And I hope we don't have to end up talking about the last 5 minutes of regulation. But I think, yeah, overall, you saw one of the best, most balanced offenses that we've seen in Green Bay in a long time. The next best offense you can probably think back is the 2011 team, which had guys like James Starks and Brandon Jackson and Ryan Grant and these guys at running back. And you take a step from that to a guy like Eddie Lacy, and you have a completely different dynamic there in the backfield. So it's certainly the best running game that Rodgers has had at his disposal in his career. And it really showed what this team can do when it's got a truly balanced offense. And I thought you also saw some big changes on the defensive side of the ball. Some different schemes from McCarthy and Capers that really helped account for some of the deficiencies they had in personnel. 2 years ago, it was the safety position that was such a mess with MD Jennings and Jerome McMillan. And you saw HaHa Clinton Dix come in and have a real nice impact. And now the focus is on inside linebacker. What do you do there? It looks like we might have found somebody, halfway decent and at least solid as a starter in Sam Barrington. What do you do with Clay Matthews? We'll see moving forward, but the decision to move him inside for the second half of the season proved to be just a fantastic one. And so I think overall, the defensive improvement, really helped prove that this team is capable of winning a Super Bowl. And unfortunately, we all know that it just kind of fell short there in the last few minutes of that Seattle game. And I think a lot of the blame of that some of the blame does fall on Mike McCarthy in terms of the play calling. And I think, we'll be very curious to see how the play calling takes shape now that he's given up play calling duties to Tom Clements, the former offensive coordinator. So it's certainly a season that, the Packers fans can look back on fondly, and there were a lot of great successes, but yeah, the lasting taste in everybody's mouth is going to be what happened at the end of the NFC Championship game. And not getting a chance to play in that Super Bowl is really going to eat at us for a long time.
A lot of the blame is going to be thrown on the coach when the team has such a great year and then just a bad game or even just a bad quarter. You kind of have to look at the guy directing the show and wondering what he could have done differently to make the outcome a bit more favorable. Now, with Mike McCarthy, he's kind of known for being a little bit conservative and taking his foot off the gas and playing safe football in some of the higher pressure situations. Now, nobody wants to go too aggressive and turn the ball over, but at the same time, going into a game as the NFC Championship was, I believe Russell Wilson had 2 interceptions before he had a completion. And, it obviously was not great. Now, he's obviously a great coach. That's pretty much not up for debate. What we're kind of interested in is, what would you say the fan opinions of the extension he received after such a successful season, but such a confusing NFC Championship game?
Yeah, I think by and large, the approval rating, if you want to call it that, for McCarthy is pretty positive. He does his best work during the week. That much is certain. He's a great developer of players. He's a great game planner. It's comes down to the execution of the game plans on offense, at least, that has been the big question mark and the big thing that the Packers fans have criticized him for over the last several years. And I think he took that step again in giving up the play calling duties. He's going to be more involved in game planning on defense and on special teams, where, which was just a mess last year. And I think that's the best move that he probably could have made, because of the relationship Aaron Rodgers has with the rest of his coaches, how intelligent of a guy he is. He can run the offense. And Rodgers is one of those guys who could go out there and call every play from the huddle anyway. He wouldn't need a guy in his headset, but, I think again, it's McCarthy's biggest deficiencies are on game days, and, it's whether it's challenges or again, some of these play calls. And I certainly wouldn't be surprised to see him step in and call the occasional play here and there. When it comes down to crunch time coming down this season. I think Steve Spurrier was kind of talking about it earlier this year, and because he tried giving up play calling at one point, and they asked him this year if he was going to do it again next year. He's like, well, I always ended up calling the plays anyway, even though I didn't plan on it. So it's one of those things where it's so ingrained in McCarthy and who he is that I do wonder if he's really going to be able to let go of it. But I think it's going to be a good thing for the offense that he's developing the game plans, but he's letting his subordinates and his players just go out and execute.
And looking at the other part of the kind of leadership duo, GM Ted Thompson, incredibly impressive. The stat that we keep coming back to, 56 of the 58 previously active players on the roster have only played for the Packers. I don't even know how you could do that. And all this while being 8th in cap room at $17 million. We definitely need to know, how is he doing this? I mean, how is he so good at finding people and drafting them and then keeping them all in, a tiny town in Wisconsin? I mean, right now it's pointing to sorcerer. Sorcerer, or, he's got some sort of mentalist, hypnotizing ability or something like that. I don't know. I know he's not the kind of guy to trade first-round draft picks for Trent Richardson or whatever. It's just not fair. I mean,
it's all the souls that he collects and then sells to the devil. I'm telling you.
You know what, though? That's a viable answer at this point. You could say that and be like, well, I mean, it sounds about right. How else are you doing it?
Well, for Ted, I think the biggest thing is he views the draft somewhat as a lottery, and the more picks you have, the more chances you're going to strike it rich. And so it's not, I don't know if he necessarily has more, more hits than other teams. He just takes more chances. He's known for trading back and picking up lots of picks in the middle rounds, and those middle rounds are really where he's made his biggest successes, with guys like Josh Sitton and Corey Linsley and TJ Lang and David Bakhtiari, all those guys on the offensive line. That's 4 or 5 starters who are 4th or 5th round draft picks. You obviously have to hit on your first rounders. Balaga's been a great one. Obviously, Ted's first pick as a Packers GM and Rodgers couldn't have worked out any better. But, I think it's just taking as many shots as you can. And the thing with Ted in the draft is all he does is live and breathe football. He really, he doesn't have much of a family life. He's in the building. He's studying tape at all hours of the day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so this is what he does his entire life. And he's surrounded himself with some really, really good guys in the front office who know what they're doing. Russ Ball is one of them. He's the main salary cap guru. He kind of has come up with the structure that the Packers like to use for their contracts for their guys that are on second and third contracts. And, as far as keeping guys like Balaga and Cobb this year when they were offered more money elsewhere, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the fact that they've developed a great chemistry in the locker room with just the entire offense and the organization. it is kind of a mystery to try to figure out what it is that he's able to do to keep some of these guys in town when they could be getting bigger deals elsewhere. So I do think with Cobb, getting off on a little bit of a tangent, I think he recognized that he's got a great chance if he signed a 4-year deal in Green Bay. His numbers are going to probably be as good or better in Green Bay than they would be anyplace else because he's still got Jordy Nelson on the other side of him. He's got Devontae Adams emerging on the outside. And he's a young guy. I mean, he hit free agency at the age of 25. So with another 4-year deal, he'll hit it again at 29, and he'll have another chance to clean up with a big contract. So, but yeah, as far as Ted goes, I'm kind of as much in the dark as you guys, but all I can really chalk it up to is the fact that football is his life, period.
Now, when we're talking about all the moves that he makes, and by all I mean very few, because he doesn't make many whatsoever. He drafts, he keeps, and then guys might leave, but no one ever comes back to the Packers, really. It seems like that once they're gone for good. And once they've left, they kind of seem to really drop off in production. A lot of fans kind of seem to think that it's a system thing, or how the players buy in seems to be what brews success there. So when we're talking about some of those players that have left and your opinions on if they'll be successful or not, let's start with AJ Hawk and Brad Jones. They released both their starting inside linebackers, and it wasn't a big surprise. So kind of give us your wrap up on why they were let go, because it seems like those two guys, both starters, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense in AJ Hawk's case because he was getting better at the tail end of his career, or Brad Jones, nobody really knows a whole lot about him. So he seems to be more supplemental than anything else. So I can't really speak on that subject too much, but AJ Hawk just seemed to be very curious other than the cap hit. Was this a guy that just was not going to give a hometown discount, or do the Packers really want to move on and let Clay Matthews kind of take over that inside linebacker spot and make this the Clay Matthews defense?
Well, to be honest, neither Hawk or Brad Jones played well the last couple of years. I'll set you straight right there. I do not think that AJ Hawk has played well for a few years now.
Well, in that case, do you think that he's played well at all ever?
The Super Bowl year, 2010, I think it was his best season. That year he was actually a capable coverage linebacker that season. And what we've been seeing is over the last couple of years, he has really struggled to maintain his speed at a decent playing weight, 240, 245, something like that. And he was playing down around 230 this year, just to try to maintain the speed and the athleticism to man that inside linebacker position. And what that meant is that he wasn't able to take on blocks. He wasn't able to support the run very well. And it basically kind of became a liability. And Hawk is a great guy. I've met him. I've talked to him. He was one of those perfect quintessential Packer guys, but it just became a case of the cap hit was too much for the level of production that he was able to put out. And at that point, Thompson has done a good job of cutting guys a year early rather than a year late. As far as Brad Jones goes, he had one good year, at inside linebacker filling in when we had a couple of injuries. And then he got a 3-year deal after that season. I think that was after 2012 or 2013. And then
he had a year left, I think, on his deal when they cut him.
Yeah, I think that's right. And then he has again not played very well the last couple of years. He actually got benched week 2 or 3 this year and didn't start again. And he was basically relegated to special teams duty and the occasional snap here and there on defense. So yeah, both of those guys, carrying cap hits in the $3 to $4 million range based on their production. It was time to clean house and bring some new personnel in, figure out what you're going to do with Clay Matthews. There's a couple of young guys who they've got coming along and we'll probably get to in a little bbit. Carl Bradford's one of them. But there's a little bit of talent there, and I definitely think they'll address the position in the draft. But yeah, I would say that the main reason is just the level of production that they were getting out of Hawk and Jones just was nowhere near the cap hits that those two guys had.
And how do you kind of perceive their success on the other teams that they go to? Like Hockey's going to go to the Bengals, and you're talking about how his size and his weight and his speed and stuff is a big time issue. That's a defense that really, really relies on the speed of linebackers. So for them to come in, or for him to come in and not have any of those attributes, it kind of seems like he won't really be a big part of that defense. And then when you're looking at Jones, he goes to a Chip Kelly defense that's going to have a linebacking core that's most likely going to be led by Kiko Alonso. So he's probably going to be a rotational depth guy at best. What do you kind of perceive as their success outside of here? Because, like I said, one thing that seems to happen with Packers players is that they leave and then they just fade into obscurity right away.
Yeah, I think both of these guys are going to be just that. They're going to be rotational guys. They'll contribute on special teams. They shouldn't be starting unless there's an injury. I mean, that's basically where they are in the stage of their careers. So I would be very surprised if you see any substantial contributions from either of those two guys this year.
So the Clay Matthews move to inside linebacker, that was a really big change on defense. That ended up really becoming what defined the Packers defense down the stretch. I mean, he comes in, he moves from outside to inside during a Bears game nonetheless, and really just confused everybody, confused analysts, confused Jay Cutler the most, because let's be honest, that's easy to do. Shiny Keys can do that. But he goes inside and just dominates at that position almost as much as he does on the outside. So what is his role going to actually be now? Is he going to be an inside linebacker? He's going to be an outside linebacker, because there's difference in pay scales. There's difference in weight tables. There's difference in complete role assignment. What exactly is his role going to be? Is he still going to be listed as an outside linebacker, or is he going to be an inside linebacker? Because that also kind of goes into how teams prepare, because if he's an outside linebacker, teams are going to prepare differently for him playing outside than they are for inside. And I know that's not a fair statement, because any team can play anybody anywhere they want. You can play a wide receiver on defense if you want, but it just seems not deceptive, but just confusing.
Yeah, I think sometimes people even oversell a little bit how much he played on the inside, because they really did move him around a lot, even in that second half of the season. Yeah, he was playing middle. He was playing kind of more of a almost a 4-3 outside linebacker position. And then he played his traditional 3-4 outside spot quite a bit too on passing downs. So really he was kind of a Swiss Army knife for Dom Capers. And he's the kind of guy who, at his size and his speed and his level of athleticism, you can basically put him at any linebacker position. And as long as he's got time to prepare and understand his assignments, he's going to be successful, because he's got the physical tools to do it. If that's covering running backs and tight ends in pass coverage, he can do that. It's obviously he's a great pass rusher, so that's not a question. And he's a good run defender too. And I think that was the biggest thing is, his ability to diagnose run plays from the inside, after, coming out of the bye week, having 2 weeks to prepare at that position. I do think you're going to see the team try to add, whether it's through the draft or maybe once the May 12th free agent deadline kicks in, maybe we'll add a free agent or something, but there will be new blood at inside linebacker for sure. And Sam Barrington's going to be the starter at the mic, I think. That much is solid. He's talked about how he really sees, his position and his role as the captain of the defense. Which kind of leaves the will position, that weak inside linebacker, which is a little bit more of a coverage role, kind of open. And I think you'll see Matthews there some this season. I do think that the team really wants to get him back, though, to being a pass rushing outside linebacker, because obviously those are the guys that make the money. Those are the guys that affect the quarterback, and ultimately they can have the biggest impact on the most amount of plays. But yeah, I honestly think that what's going to happen is going to be a little bit dictated by what takes place in the draft. And if they don't get a guy that they think they can plug in there on day one inside, you're going to see a lot of the same kinds of concepts and Matthews moving around a lot, the same way that we did in the second half of 2014.
Yeah. When we're talking, that's the guy that makes the money. I mean, you're paying him to rush the quarterback. You're paying him to put Jay Cutler on his back. You're paying him to tear up Matt Stafford. That is what his job is. He's out there making that money. So moving him to the inside, where he wouldn't necessarily make the same amount of money doing what he does there, it kind of not devalues, but it just changes the way that a team would think about his skill set. So definitely an important thing to make sure that he's doing what he's brought in to do. And from the outside looking in, for somebody who isn't a big time Packers fan, who isn't a Packers writer, it just seems confusing with how they're handling the whole situation. Not bad, just confusing, because let's be honest, he's awesome no matter where he is on the field.
Yeah, and again, I think that's the key is just like you said, you can line him up at any of the 4 linebacker positions and he's going to have success.
Yeah, so let's go on to another guy who made a lot of money this offseason, Ryan Bulaga. Bringing him back, it's a risky move, especially with the almost $34 million deal that they gave him. The right tackle has been great, but that's only really when he plays, because injury concerns for him seem to be a little staggering, at least from our point of view. What are your thoughts on his new deal and the concerns that history tells us that he could be earning a lot of his money on the bench?
Yeah, Bulaga, like you said, he's got that injury history, and that's the big question mark. And he does play at arguably a Pro Bowl level when he's on the field. This year we got lucky enough to have him for 15 games. And so I think obviously the team is banking on him being healthy. You don't go into the season, assuming your key players are going to get hurt. But, I also think that the reason that they were able to commit so much money to Bulaga as a right tackle with the injury risk is because they've got a left tackle who's in the 3rd year of his rookie deal in David Bakhtiari. And so he's a guy who, he's become a very well-rounded pass blocker, still has his struggles in the run game to some extent, but, he's a guy that you can throw out there and Rodgers doesn't have to be looking behind him too much. And again, having him on a rookie deal, that frees up a lot of the money that you might be paying a star left tackle, so you can pay the guy on the opposite side.
And it's not like Rodgers has a whole lot to worry about even when they rush him. I mean, the guy seems to have like just a special ESP when it comes to defenders. He knows exactly where to move no matter who's back there rushing. I mean, I remember the days, not even just last year, but the years before that. I mean, you watch Julius Peppers getting after him, gets into the backfield like almost instantaneously, and Rodgers knows the very moment to move that 1 inch up or back or whatever for Peppers to go right by him. And it's aggravating for me as a Bears fan, but it's amazing to watch as a sports fan. It's almost inhuman, and that's why a lot of times I call him an alien, because I don't think he's playing fair. Like, I think he's got something extra that no other quarterback has.
Yeah, his pocket mobility and his awareness is second to none in the NFL right now. And that's what is so critical about his game, is his ability to move within the pocket. You really saw towards the end of the season when he had that issue with the thigh where he was not able to move nearly as much. They put him back there in the pistol a lot of the time, so he was at least set back from the line of scrimmage a little bit. And that at least helped out with his mobility issues. But yeah, I think you saw a little bit of a different style to his game over the last maybe 4 or 5 games. But yeah, back on the offensive line, this group is one that McCarthy really wanted to keep together. These 5 guys last season, far and away the best offensive line Green Bay has had in over a decade. And so I think the continuity there, the fact that all 5 of those guys generally like each other, I think again, that kind of played into Bulaga's decision to come back, because according to, multiple reports, he was offered more money from Buffalo to take his talents to New York instead. But, coming back for taking almost $1 million a year less to stay in Green Bay. The thing with Ted Thompson again is I think he gets a number in his head that this is what I'm going to go for, and for this particular player, and I'm not going to go over it. And that number was apparently right where Bulaga was comfortable coming back, and again, taking the risk that, maybe I'm not gonna make quite as much money over the next couple of years, but I got a much better shot at a ring here. And I certainly, he enjoys his life in Green Bay. He's a Midwestern guy. He's from Illinois, obviously played at Iowa. So,
yep.
He certainly likes the atmosphere and the lifestyle in Green Bay. So we're very happy to have him back. And again, the cap's in good shape. So ultimately that's the other thing that's critical here.
Now, another guy that was brought back that is a big part of the blocking game is John Kuhn. He's a fan favorite as well with the Packers fans. I mean, everybody loves him, yelling Kuhn during games. A great blocker, a great wheelback as well, and a short yardage guy that can catch and both run on the short yardage situations. And with his signature kind of flailing jump move, he still is a really good threat in the pass game. Especially, I just remember a lot of those swing passes he has, and he makes that first guy miss, whether it's him running them over or actually seems really, really agile for a guy his size. The Packers love to run that full house set, but can he still be someone who has a big role in a offense that kind of seems to be heading more towards that high pass offensive sets and, the pistols and the spreads? And I mean, you guys have Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb and Devontae Adams. I mean, you got all these guys that are the big threat downfield weapons. What can he actually do in that offense anymore other than just kind of be a gift to the fans to see a few times a game?
Well, Kuhn's really changed his game from the last couple of years to the 2014 season. For a long time, he was kind of the third down back. He was, like you said, doing a lot of the catching on the backfield on third downs. They used him as the short yardage back. And as far as that goes, I would love to lead a petition to retire the John Kuhn dive on 3rd and 1, because when you got a guy like Eddie Lacy in the backfield, just give him the ball, please. So that's a different story, but I think you saw him transform his game from more of kind of an all-around fullback, pass catching, pass blocking guy to he became a better lead blocker in the run game last year. You saw him more of an I formation, typical lead blocking kind of guy for Lacy, and that was something that you hadn't really seen from Kuhn for a long time. And I think that's where he's going to be really the most valuable this year. Is certainly he'll be out there on occasion. On third downs, but that's another area where Lacy has really improved his game. He's a much better receiver now than he was his rookie year. His pass blocking is very good for a running back. And so, yeah, Kuhn he'll be contributing on special teams like he always does. And I think you'll see him used a lot, continuing to be used as a lead blocker. And I think Packers fans in general are grateful that he's developed that part of his game, because it does continue to make him relevant in Green Bay, because I think if he weren't turning into a better run blocker over the last couple of years, I don't know that he would be back this year.
You watch him on TV, and he's definitely a fun guy to watch play, but I was just concerned that he wouldn't have a big time role outside of, the few times they line up in the eye, because they seem to line up gun and single back a lot more. It just tends to be the Eddie Lacy show in the run game anymore. It's not a whole lot of John Kuhn. So that's why I was just really curious as to why they brought him back. Moving on to Randall Cobb, though, definitely one of the biggest surprises of the offseason was him seemingly giving the Packers a hometown discount to return to the team. Once again, the Packers GM and cult leader find a way to keep a great player from escaping and keeping him from being paid too much more than Jordy Nelson, to be honest. So first off, my question is how, and then secondly, how, and third is I hate you for being able to do this.
Well, again, it's kind of like Balaga. It was I think it was a recognition that far and away Cobb's best chance to win a Super Bowl is going to be in Green Bay. He came in the year after we won in 2010. He was part of that 2011 draft class. So, he has not tasted that level of success. And he's another guy who I think he genuinely loves his teammates. He loves the organization. He loves the community. And I think all those things kind of played into it. But ultimately, football players' free agent decisions come down to two things as far as I'm concerned. It's money and it's championships. And in this case, Cobb knows that, again, he's going to hit free agency 4 years from now when he's 29, so he's got another shot at a good contract. So his best shot at a ring or two is going to be in Green Bay these next 4 years. And to be honest, I am stoked to see him back, because you get a healthy Jordy on one side, you get Cobb doing his thing in the slot, and honestly, I think he's far and away the best slot receiver in the game right now. I'm obviously a little biased as far as that goes, but and then you get, again, Devontae Adams. You mentioned him. I mean, he really developed down the stretch last season, and I think if you get those three real strong receiving weapons, that's a really tough task for any team to defend.
And like you said, when you're looking at that money or championships thing, you kind of get a chance to do both in Green Bay. You look at Eric Decker taking all the money and running to New York, and he's got nobody throwing to him, and it's, he's taking a step back, a massive step back at that. So this one contract he's getting, like, that's it. There's not going to be a second look. You look at Sanders going to Denver. All right, he's got money and some talent, but for how long? What happens when Peyton Manning's gone? There's questions there. I think with Randall Cobb, as you said, he's got a great chance to win a championship. There's a continuity within the organization. He knows what his day-to-day is going to be, and that's massive for anybody. Changing jobs is a nightmare all the time, and I got to imagine even more so getting used to a new coach and a new way to live your every moment of, your life. And he's going to have a chance in a few years to get another contract that if he feels like he can get big money then, well, all right, fine. But it's the smart move to stay with the best quarterback in the game. And it's not even close right now between him and the number 2. So it's just a smart move to stay in Green Bay.
I think one other thing too that you can't oversell is Green Bay is a great place to get endorsements. You might not think so being such a small market, but
you're not a small market. You're not.
Well,
yeah, you go right to hell with that. With small market. No. That's the only real gripe I can truly have with the Packers is so many of your fans are not like, oh, hey, I'm from Wisconsin and have legitimate ties to the organization. No, you're talking about football with people, and everybody in the office has a fantasy league, and you got to have a team, and so you pick the Packers, and not a small market. Everybody in Alaska, the local team is the Seahawks, and right behind them is the friggin' Packers. I'm in Alaska. No. You stop it.
Fair enough. But again, going back to that, the endorsement possibilities in Green Bay are massive. Cobb was, he saw that firsthand last year where he got a batch of cheese curds doused in ketchup that got tossed on him when he did a Lambeau leap. A week later, he had a Clorox endorsement. I mean, stuff like that you might not get any place else. That's another opportunity for some added income. So, that could very well make up whatever difference in income that he would have had if he went to Jacksonville or Oakland or wherever.
Well, the Green Bay endorsement thing, it's got to be a lot of that is product of not only Aaron Rodgers, but the Brett Favre years. Brett Favre was so popular and just brought so much attention to Green Bay. I mean, if I'm looking back on all of the years I've been a Bears fan and looking at the Packers, I couldn't name you more than just a few different Packers players outside of Brett Favre on a lot of those real successful teams he played with. So when you're talking about the opportunities endorsement wise, I mean, a lot of that rests on both the success of Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers and him being able to bring that attention to the rest of the Packers players.
You have a guy now getting commercial deals because he kind of looks like Aaron Rodgers. That's a whole new level of popular. Oh, you kind of look like the guy. Throw money at him. Just throw money at him. Why not?
I will say Tom Wigglesworth is a pretty funny guy, though.
True.
I don't know if you've seen the video, but there's like a whole 20 minutes about how he goes into Green Bay, impersonates Aaron Rodgers, and then finally gets to go meet him and play catch on the field at Lambeau. So that's worth a look if you haven't seen that.
We'll be checking that out. I know Rod and myself were both like clicking away trying to find that right now.
The first thing I did was Google his name and trying to pull him up, and I was like, oh, where is it?
But the Packers do enjoy a very wide level of fame. You hear all the people in England griping that they got to deal with the Jaguars every year, and rightly so. There would be nothing but excitement if they hear the Packers are coming to town. That would be the kind of thing that would be, almost internationally a deal. The Packers have that kind of level of notoriety.
Yeah, and there has been a little bit of talk about potentially the Packers being involved in one of the London games in the next couple of years. It sounds like the team, because of how important the team and home games are to the city's economy, they've really been pushing the league to make it a road game. So maybe one of the games that they've already got slated for the Jaguars or something in a couple of years. Because I think they're on our schedule in 2016, if I'm not mistaken, as a road game in Jacksonville. So, that might be an opportunity for us to find out if that's really the case.
I would think the one that everybody would want to see is something like Packers Seahawks on that totally neutral field. That would be a good kind of settle the debate kind of game.
They'll never take that big of a payout to a different market ever.
No, they wouldn't. They wouldn't, because both owners would be flipping the hell out, going, "What are you doing?"
And by both, you mean, the Seahawks owner and the 250,000.
Yes, that's
it, right?
Yeah, all of you who've got your little certificate and you frame it, and
I have one.
Go. Yeah, see, there you go.
I am a part owner of the Green Bay Packers out of spite to all of my Packers friends.
You're a Bears fan. How the hell do you get a share?
Because I bought one.
Because he has money. Which really kind of proves the point of that whole thing. Like, everybody can go ahead, pinky out, high society, own a football team. Yeah, no. Anybody with, leftover money from the cocaine binge this weekend can do that.
Sorry you're in the dark here, Kyle. You got two shareholders against one here, man.
Yeah, but Ron's share... Never mind, we're doing the next thing. Fine, whatever. Just because I spend all of my cocaine money on cocaine, you're going to go ahead and hate on me. That's fine. Jealousy. I can't feel my teeth, and I'm fine with that. Anyway.
That's because it's cold and you're in Alaska.
All right. Let's force myself to get to business aspect of this, because I'd much rather talk about cheese and cocaine and stock ownership, because that sounds like an awesome 80s movie right there. Looking over the roster, I mean, we've gone over the popular moves and all that, but we know that hard work and research and all that knowledge is great, but Ron and I are just too lazy to go find all those, like you said, the fourth round guys and these hidden gems. We know they're on the team. We know that. It's inevitable at this point. Somebody on the Packers is way better than anybody gave him credit for, and it's going to happen. Obviously, we don't have the draft yet, so we can't ask about that, but who should we be looking for to have a breakout year this next season?
Well, I got a couple names for you. And most of these guys are players who were drafted last year, and they're expecting a big jump from their first to their second year. Carl Bradford was a fourth round pick last year. Again, back to the fourth round. But he was drafted initially with the thought that they were going to make him an outside linebacker. They played him there for 3 weeks in the preseason. He did absolutely nothing, and they realized we need to move this guy inside. So they kept him on the active roster as a fourth or fifth string inside linebacker. He didn't play he wasn't active for a single game last year, but he's got great athleticism. He's got great tools. And I think if, depending on how the offseason program goes, you could actually see him pushing for some snaps inside. And if he develops the way I think the coaching staff thinks he might, that might be the solution at one of the inside linebacker positions. Obviously that's a best case scenario, but we'll see where that goes. Another couple of guys are Jared Abbrederis and Jeff Janis, the pair of wide receivers that were drafted last year. Abbrederis, Wisconsin fans know him because he was a star for the Badgers for several years. He had a torn ACL in training camp last year. He'll be back to full strength for the off-season program. So he's ready to go. And then you get Jeff Janis, who came out of Division II, and he's looking to make the team as a fifth receiver most likely. But he's got incredible skills and athleticism. He's one of those workout warrior kind of guys who is going to need a little bit of time to adjust to the level of play in the NFL, especially coming from Division II. But he had an all-world combine last year. I think his cone drill was in 6.65 or something like that. Or he's got incredible change of direction skills, and he's got real good straight line speed. So he's another guy to watch out for. Obviously, the question is, are those guys going to have enough passes thrown their way sitting behind Jordy, Randall, and Devontae on the depth chart? And then I think the other guy to keep an eye on would be Dimitri Goodson. Same kind of thing. He was a sixth round pick last year, but there's potential opportunities there at cornerback with Devon House, Tramon Williams both leaving. And Casey Hayward's penciled in a one starting spot. Sam Shields obviously has the other one locked down. But Goodson could be a guy where you could start seeing him on the field a little more. He's another guy who's kind of a late bloomer because he played college basketball for several years, and he made the transition to football his junior and senior year of college. And so he's got some skills to brush up on and really develop his head for the game. But he's got a real good set of physical attributes, and I think you could see him contribute at least in sub packages, if not, potentially make a run at a starting job out of training camp.
So with all that said, and you go through all of the players that nobody really knows about. And the Packers, like Kyle said, has a lot of players that will become great because that's just the MO that the Packers have. The Packers, they still have team needs that they need to fill through the draft or through free agency. Let's look at a few of those. Inside linebacker. If Clay Matthews could be in two places at once, then it wouldn't be a problem there. But unfortunately, he can't. So inside linebacker is the most glaring issue facing the Packers, and it will likely require more than just one move to fix, whether it be bringing a guy up from those second or third string spots like you're talking about, or going out and drafting and really trying to bring in somebody that can be a dynamic playmaker there, or going out into free agency after you said the May 12th free agency period and seeing who can come in and be a veteran leader. How do you see the Packers attacking the draft to improve here quickly?
Yeah, I think there's two main spots, and you nailed it with the inside linebacker. The question is whether or not there's going to be anybody at the 30th pick who's at that position who's really of value at that spot. There's a couple of names that we're hearing as guys that they like. Stephon Anthony from Clemson is one of them. But he seems to fit more as kind of a second round guy. So again, obviously inside, probably day one or day two, they're going to need to take somebody there. The other position is corner. And again, with House and Williams both leaving, that leaves a hole at one of the outside corner spots. Cause again, you could pencil Casey Hayward in as a starter, but he's had a lot of success in the slot. Hasn't really played on the outside a whole lot. So I would also expect, cornerback to be addressed fairly early in the draft. The other spots you could look at, tight end, you could maybe make the case that there's a need there. There's a couple of decent players in Andrew Corliss and Richard Rodgers. Neither one of them is really a game breaker. And if they had a field stretching tight end who could block, that would be a real nice plus for the offense. Not that we necessarily need, a whole lot more offensive weapons and, based on last season, it certainly seems like the defense is where we need to improve. And then I think defensive line, you can always improve there, and nose tackle especially. With LaTroy Guion and BJ Raji, they're both back on 1-year deals, so you don't have a long-term answer at nose tackle. So I wouldn't be surprised again if you see, round 3, maybe early on day 3, rounds 4 or 5 of the draft, you see kind of a long-term project nose tackle taken, with the intent of kind of letting them sit for a year, develop a little bit, and then potentially take over the starting role in 2016.
So when we're talking about tight end, Brandon Bostic isn't in the cards there? He's not going to be your dynamic playmaker?
No, go figure. Yeah, considering he's in Minnesota now, that's definitely not happening.
I had to take a dig. I had to take a little bit of one. I mean, you guys haven't had a great tight end, it seems like, since who was the guy that played with Brett Favre towards the end?
We were thinking probably Mark Chmura, Keith Jackson, those years in the Super Bowl era.
Yeah, that's about, I think. Yeah, I guess that's right.
Jermichael Finley had some nice seasons there too, and the last few years, but he was always, he always kind of had some weird issues with drops, and he was never really much of a blocker. So, yeah, as far as well-rounded, all-around tight ends, it's been probably since the Chmura Jackson years in the mid-90s. And you think that Richard Rodgers, could he kind of step in soon and maybe take that role? Because he had some really good plays last year. He was he's young, so he's going to have his own mistakes. But I remember watching Aaron Rodgers throw, I think it was like a 42-yard pass downfield to him that was just, and he was just right there. It seems like he has a lot of ability. Obviously he's kind of a bigger, slower kind of guy, but he definitely has the skill set, it seems like, to be that. Yeah, he's definitely shown some flashes. I think I know the pass you're thinking about. I want to say that was in the New England game. And he's going to be one of those guys who's going to make a lot of really tough catches in traffic. And there were a couple of games where he had maybe 4 or 5 catches, but every one of them was contested, and every one of them, it seemed like, was on third down to move the chains. So that's the kind of guy he's going to be. He's never going to be a dominating Gronk-like tight end as far as I'm concerned, but he's got the size, he's got the ability to be at least a capable blocker at the very least. And yeah, he'll make some big catches for you, even if he doesn't make necessarily some really spectacular ones like Jermichael Finley would. So on defensive line,
you talked about a little bit about the 1-year deals that Guion and everybody has there, that, you know, the depth is thin, and they're looking to probably fill some of that in, at least developmentally, through the draft. One thing I want to talk about, though, is LaTroy Guion and them bringing him back, because I was just talking to a very big Packers fan today, and one of them brought up that it was kind of out of character for the Packers to bring him back after kind of what everything happened, you know, all the money and the drugs and everything, and the gun and everything that was found in his car. And I know that a lot of the apologists are going to say, well, he never really got in any big trouble, and it was just a fine, and he's on probation, and he's, you know, it was just a mistake. But I mean, we see a culture now in the NFL, and this is something we talk about a lot on the show, that is changing in the NFL. It seems like the further we go at this rate, the more trouble we see guys getting in. And a lot of that has to do with the new age of the media and everybody having access to instant information and stuff like that. And we know that there was problems before. We know that there was domestic violence before. We know there was drug use. We know there was guys killing people. We know that kind of thing happened. It just didn't make it to the news. People just didn't figure it out, and nobody got caught. So kind of fill us in on what your thoughts were on him coming back after everything that happened, because it seems to be one side of the fence or the other.
Yeah, there has been a lot of debate on that, and I will agree that it is to some extent out of character for the Packers organization to bring him back. It's an unusual situation. You know, whether or not it's the right call, you know, I'm not gonna get into that too much. But what I do know is that the team, the defense, McCarthy even raved about Guion's leadership in the locker room. I mean, he's a veteran guy. He spent 6 or 7 years in Minnesota, so he knows his way around the league. He knows how to work, how to prepare, and he really stepped in a big way when Green Bay needed him to last year when Raji went down. And so I think all those things considered, and you know, we can debate the how serious the charges and the actions actually were, but I think what it boils down to is he's a guy who can contribute. He's a guy who has the respect of his teammates and his coaching staff, and when you have that buys you the benefit of the doubt when something like this comes up. And so, right or wrong, I do think, you know, he'll probably get a game or two suspension to start the year from the NFL, even though he didn't officially get charged with anything, or the charges were entirely dropped. But I do think he'll be a contributor for this team this year, and you know, hopefully he keeps himself clean, and we get to see him, you know, play well this season, because he's got basically his entire contract is in incentives and roster bonuses. So he's going to be challenged to be on the field for every game.
Yeah, very Greg Hardy kind of contract. Greg Hardy, who is the guy, Ray McDonald's style deal, where it's almost barely any money, but if he does well and he keeps his nose clean, everything could turn out good for him.
Now, let's look ahead. I mean, it's way too early to know what exactly is going to happen, what with the draft still to happen. I would say there's still free agency to happen a little bit, but that doesn't as much impact the Packers as some of the other teams. But when we look ahead at the schedule, it's fairly tough. NFC West, AFC West, the division rivals, obviously, and Dallas and Carolina. So quite a few tough teams. Now, regardless of last year's record, you know, you're not really playing anything in the way of pushovers, with the possible exception of Oakland. It's definitely going to be exciting football, but it's going to be tough football. Now, looking ahead, what would you say is your expectation of the team this year, and what kind of record do they need to reach, not just in the regular season, but in the playoffs, for the fans to consider the season a success?
I think this season the expectation is to win a Super Bowl. To put it plainly, after the way we fell apart against the Seahawks, I think anything short of at least an appearance in the Super Bowl, and probably anything short of another Lombardi Trophy, will be considered a disappointment. I think I think that's a reasonable goal, because I think this team is clearly on paper as one of the two best teams in the NFC. And at that point, if, you know, you should, I don't think anybody should apologize for high expectations. So I think as far as record goes, I think you want to look for probably another 12-4 record or so. I certainly think this team should win the division once again. Cause obviously your divisional opponents are playing the same teams you are for the vast majority of the schedule. And so, so they're going up against those same tough NFC and AFC West teams. But, I think, to some extent it is Lombardi or bust this year for the Packers.
Now that's a pretty lofty standard, one that the Packers, given the talent and the coaching, definitely attainable. But let's say that you start to experience some injury concerns. Aaron Rodgers is obviously the first place to look. Are the fans going to be a little bit more lenient with the expectations if the team starts to get hit by the injury bug? Is there anything that, aside from massive injury to a key player, that would allow the fans to reduce the expectations in any way?
Yeah, I think major injury is probably about it. You saw 2 years ago when Rodgers did go down for those 8 games. That really kind of put things in perspective a little bit for Packers fans in general, because you think back for the last almost 25 years now, and we've not really ever had a time when our starting quarterback wasn't out there for any substantial length of time. Rodgers has done a great job of not missing games, not as good as Favre did, obviously, but, he's missed a couple here and there. But as far as an extended absence, that was kind of a wake-up call, I think, for Packers fans, that, oh crap, this is what other teams have to deal with. They have to play backup quarterbacks once in a while. It was weird. And I think it was almost kind of pressing the reset button at that point. So I think if something like that happens again, yeah, you're going to see, the expectations be kind of recalibrated a little bit. But if this team has any semblance of reasonable health like we did last year for the most part, yeah, I think it's Super Bowl expectations are realistic.
All right. So we're actually pressing time here, and I don't want to rush you out the door, but we're going to kind of turn everything over to you. We want to let you kind of plug anything you want to plug, go through anything that's coming up, any kind of features, any shows that or podcasts that you guys will be doing, anything like that, things that any of the fans or readers should be looking for. Go ahead and now's your time to do that.
Well, thanks. One of the things that I want to mention is I got a great opportunity this year to go to the Scouting Combine in Indianapolis. And, as part of the SB Nation network, and I was able to get a ton of audio from players and do a bunch of interviews and things. So I would say, definitely go check out the Combine section at Acme Packing Company. We've got a lot of great interviews with some of the guys there. I also tried to get talking to some of the lesser known players. So not your locked first round guys, but some of these small school guys, a guy like Trey McBride, a receiver from William and Mary, we're thinking he's probably 3rd, 4th round pick, but just guys that have interesting stories. There's another bit about, roommates who both play inside linebacker for Georgia, who are both draft eligible, and, kind of how they build off each other. And so things like that. It was certainly a great experience, and hopefully I'll be able to do it again sometime. We're wrapping up a mock draft right now, so we're kind of going through that step by step. We're in the 2nd round right now. We're going to go all the way through 3 rounds. That's going to go through the Friday of next week. So definitely keep an eye out for that. We'll definitely have some podcasts during and around draft season, and kind of recapping what happens during the draft, and taking a look towards training camp. So, we try to cover a little of everything, and so we hope you check out Acme Packing Company.
Now, would you be willing to come back on post draft and kind of be one of the 2 or 3 guys we bring on afterwards for the NFC North kind of wrap up? I already have Jeremy Reisman, who's one of the writers over there at Detroit Pride. He's Pride of Detroit. He's going to come on and do a little spot with us. Would you be willing to join us on that?
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be great.
We're trying to get somebody from all the teams so we can start just throwing out aggressive statements and seeing who starts the shouting match, because I think it's going to be funny. I want to wait, just how long can we go before somebody starts saying some really hurtful things?
Well,
yeah,
I mean, in this situation, I think you kind of have the leg up on everybody with the whole we win and nobody else in their division does. So, I mean, you have that.
It's good to be the king.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but it's almost an unfair position. Like, we can't even make fun of the state.
Yeah,
I mean, like, I don't even know what to throw at you. Like, oh, you've got good cheese. Ooh, yeah, that's really a bad thing.
I mean, other than it's cold there. I mean, it's tough as a Bears fan. I'm supposed to hate the Packers so much. I'm supposed to hate them. And trust me, during the Brett Favre years, I hated the Packers. Don't get me wrong. I hated them. I thought that because that's how I was raised, being raised by
Aaron
Bears.
Rodgers is just far too hunky for Ron to hate him.
It's true. I mean, I just read a story the other day about how he took some girl to prom because she didn't have a date or something. And I was like,
Ron's just sitting there going, why couldn't it be me?
Right. And I was actually talking to one of my very good friends. He's a Packers fan. And he was like, well, hell, if Aaron Rodgers said he'd take me to prom, I do it now. And I'm 30. So, I mean, it's tough to hate them with being as successful as they are, with also them not being complete jerkwads about it as well. I mean, we look at a lot of teams. There's just so many teams that their fans are just outrageous to listen to. Sometimes they're the worst. And I'm sure those kind of teams that we're talking about. One of them is the team that you guys probably hate the most in the NFC. So, outside of the Bears.
We get them at home this year, though, so I'm pretty happy about that.
Yeah. But
that just means all their fans are going to be in your area doing, all the annoying stuff in your backyard. So, I mean, it's like, it's better, but only kind of.
Step up security, arrest them all, and then you have nobody from their team to show up.
Well, it's no easy task getting a ticket to Lambeau Field as a visiting fan anyways. I'm sure you know, Ron.
Oh, yeah, it's very, very tough. I think I've only done it twice in my entire lifetime, and I've been a Bears fan for 26 years. So it's not an easy task. I remember a friend of mine, his grandfather was on the waiting list. His dad was on the waiting list, and both died before they could actually get season tickets. And my buddy actually got the season tickets about 10 years ago. His grandfather had died of a heart attack, and his dad died of a heart attack. So they were both died rather young, but it was like
two Wisconsin men eating the cheese, dying of heart attacks.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was 22 years is what he waited for season tickets at the time.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is if I want my grandkids to have season tickets, I better get on the waiting list right now. And that's basically how it boils down to.
I mean, that's what happens when you live in a place that's cold. You preserve. I mean, that's what and old people, they don't go there. They just stick around forever. They're freeze dried. So, all right. Well, hey, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. We really, really appreciate it. I can't wait to have you back on, especially draft time, because that's going to be where I really get, your wheelhouse and your skill set out to really talk about all these guys coming out and, what picks were the best ones, what picks were the worst ones. I'm sure you'll have plenty of jabs at the rest of the teams in the division for taking terrible picks because you guys draft so well. So thank you so much for coming on. Do you have anything for us before we go?
Nope. I'm pretty,
all right.
I'm pretty simple.
Kyle, you got anything?
All I have is that I'm a little disappointed we didn't rip on Jay Cutler more, because I had put the over-under on that one at 5, and I think we had like 2. And I mean, like, we could just pepper them all in right now, but it wouldn't be the same. So all I'm going to say is we should have made fun of Jay Cutler more. That's all.
Jay, vaccinate your kids.
Oh man,
that one's a little too close to home.
That stings a little bit. I mean, well, you know what? I guess I wouldn't feel so bad, except I even threw in a Colts dig as the whole like, hey, we traded for Trent Richardson. So there you go.
All right. Well, hey, thanks, Evan. We're gonna get you back on here. Stay on with us after this, and we'll lead you out. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Take care.
Thanks.
Once again, that was Evan Tex Western, who is our managing editor from Acme Packing Company. Very excited to have him on. It's always cool to get an editor. They always know the team incredibly well, and he did a really good job representing the team. Detailed answers without being over informative, and right amount of brevity without being too light. He was a very easy guy to interview.
Yeah, also a really great insight, and with just the right amount of snark. It seemed like he had not too many jokes, but he definitely got his little sticks in when he needed to. He let me get my sticks in, which is what I needed from him, and I know he's listening right now, just so you know, it's the Bears still lead the whole series from the beginning of time. I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah, but then he's going to counter with, well, what's the record during your lifetime?
Still higher.
Really?
Yep, still higher.
Huh.
By 2 wins. So even if they win, even if they sweep us next year, the best they can do is tie it. So
I like how that's like your measure of success right now. Hey, well, when we play you, we have won more often than not. Now, granted, those were all wins before I could walk or whatever, but no, they still count. Like, you're just wrapping yourself in that and just holding it so tight and so happy.
It's like
I understand.
It's like a really greasy, well-wrapped sausage placed in between 2 very nice pieces of bread. That
is such a Chicago answer.
Well, Tex
right
is gonna,
to the Polish,
he's gonna understand it because he loves them sausages too.
Wait, do the Wisconsin people do sausage?
Yes, they do.
Oh, okay. I thought that their diet subsisted like entirely of cheese and crackers with a little bit of milk.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so, but I mean, they have to get their protein from places other than cheese too.
Well, yeah, but then I just assumed that they liquidated a chicken and like fed it to a cow, so then you've got some sort of chickeny cheese or something like that. I don't know, man.
Such a weird public school failed you in science, that's for sure.
Well, I wasn't interested in science, so I wasn't paying attention. Now, I'm very, very brilliant when it comes to a great many things, but being tolerant of the other states is not one of them. I mean, I paid attention in history class when it was like World War II and people murdering the hell out of each other. But, American history, yeah, if you guys aren't killing each other, somebody's not doing something horribly evil. I'm not interested.
All right. Well, we want to thank him for coming on. Did a great job, and we can't wait to have him back. Hopefully, we definitely want to get him back on after the draft and kind of be part of that whole NFC North rivalry talk thing that we're going to do. And
he's going to explain how they found a guy who, it just worked out amazingly well. They get a guy, and he's going to work out because it always does.
Always for their team, it will. So for all of you listeners and supporters of Evan, thank you so much for joining us. And if this is your first show, make sure you go to our website, footballsamerica.com. Check out our shows. All of our shows are there. They're right there. You can get them on mobile device right there too. Our website is now a mobile website. You can go on there and check it out. Also, you can comment right on the website. Send us emails from the contact form right on the website, or you can send them to team@footballsamerica.com. We get all of our emails there too. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/footballsamerica podcast, on Twitter @FBIA podcast, Google +/FootballIsAmerica podcast, all those places. Pretty much anywhere you can find us, anywhere that there is social media, you can find us there.
You can find us on iTunes, on Pocket Cast, on Stitcher. If you can download a podcast, you can download us. So I implore you, get out there, download us, listen to a show, regret that decision immensely, and then write a horrible review. This upcoming show would be a great one because our guest host is Larry Dyer of Chicago Bears Review. Although actually, as Packers fans, you guys would probably love that because, when Chicago fans get around together, it's never like, let's reminisce about the good times unless they pertain to Ditka. It's more of like, woe is me, and it's like a whole bunch of goth kids at a cemetery at 7 p.m.
Well, we appreciate you joining us. Also, for all of our listeners of the FBIA podcast that have not been to Acme Packing Company, and you are a Packers fan, well, guess what? You have just found the first day of the rest of your life. Congratulations, you are reborn.
Yeah. I don't want to make it seem like that transcendent or anything like that, but it's a very good website. It will have your information. I don't know if it's quite going to go ahead and make you lose those last 30 pounds you need to not be embarrassed to brush your teeth without a shirt on, but it's still good.
All right. Well, we got to wrap up. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.